figure out your fuck yes and stay with that, and everything else is a no.
And education is not encouragement. It's a conversation.
Not what are my preferences for my relationship with my kid? What do they need from me?
My work starts really for myself, but for women to remember their innate power, period. And then I also feel like I'm stepping into this work of healing relationships on the continuum of time.
The biggest tool in a relationship is allowing one another to become new versions of ourselves. Individually, we change daily. And if you're not allowing your partner to grow, how is your relationship going to grow?
Ideally, you respect your partner enough to want them to be happy and for you to be happy. For me, pregnancy is such a deep, deep spiritual journey. I mean, kind of nothing bigger. I mean, birth and death, right? Two sides of the same coin. We're asking too many questions outside of ourselves. Just fucking own your power. All of this, we kind of judge or look down upon, or it's going to be so hard, or it's horrible, the postpartum with the newborn. It's actually beautiful because we're keeping our babies alive, but mommy has to be cared for so that she can do that work. When you are home, you're given the space and time to trust that biology often knows what's up more than we do.
Welcome to Austin.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Truly. Like I was just saying, I feel like I've been here a week. It's been a day. It's been fabulous.
I think a lot of people have that feeling. You sink into a different energy here.
Yeah. And I'm from Tennessee. So the land is very similar for me. And when I land, this happened yesterday or Saturday when I came, but whenever I land in Tennessee, it's like immediately I have a visceral reaction where I feel home. It's the sound of the birds, the greenery, the trees. It's in my bones. And it's so interesting because I grew up really wanting to get out of there. And then now, our priorities shift, children shift things, but I really can't wait to get back to the South.
How long have you been in LA?
16 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I thought I was going for a year. Cut to. Yeah. I went out there for acting. I was an actress.
Ooh.
And I was already a yoga teacher and Pilates teacher, and I studied dance and science in school. And then went out there, and then, just kind of kept me out there. And I realized there's so much more to LA than the acting world. And now it's so funny too. Now it's like I want nothing to do with that world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it as beautiful and sparkly anymore. But I love the nature and I love being near the ocean, and that has really saved me.
How long ago did you kind of walk away from that part of your life?
Soon before I had Jemima, so about 10 years ago. Yeah, I love doing the work, and I had like small parts. Then I did a lot of commercials. And then I just realized it was not fun or didn't make me feel like a better person or smarter or more interesting. It felt like it was sucking my soul out to go to auditions. Like it was just gross for me, not judging anyone else, but like I hate wearing makeup. I don't wear high heels. I don't like to act like I want to fuck people I don't want to have sex with, which is what you basically have to do on auditions. It's just like, I'm Scorpio. Like I don't play that game. Like my whole life when I've liked a guy and then we start dating, they're like, I thought you hated me, before. I was like, that's me flirting. That's me flirting. So it just wasn't like aligned properly for me to be an actress.
It's interesting. A friend of mine who's been in the industry for a long time had shared that all those auditions and so many rejections, that there was a part of him that wouldn't allow him to process the rejection. And so there was all this trauma in some ways that finally came out in a medicine ceremony.
Oh,
He's
wow.
like, whoa. He had no idea that in order to succeed, you have to let go of all of that.
Yeah.
But the human part of you feels rejected every single time,
Mm-hmm.
and all that goes with that. And you can imagine how healing that was for him to be able to process all of that
That's amazing.
and move forward. Yeah, really sweet.
Wow. Yeah. And it is just so weird because it's not necessarily like the directors or casting directors are trying to be mean. You know, it's just the delivery is harsh because they're seeing like 1,000 people, right? For one little part. So it comes across really harsh that you're not this, you're not that. And, you know, that's just not normal human behavior. It's, you know, and that takes its toll.
Big time. Well, I'm glad you're doing your other work now.
Too. Thank you. Much happier. Yeah. So I am so happy to be here with the two of you. And, you know, this was such an energetic alignment for me. You know, just a quick history. Cal and I know each other from Soulfire Productions, and you were newer on the podcast. I don't know. Time is elusive to me now. Was that like a year ago?
Yeah, almost. I joined in like in June.
Yeah.
So we're recording right at the end of May. So yes.
So, and it was just literally like, oh, I like his vibe. That's cool. That's an interesting new person in the group. And I knew Kelly because I was on her podcast 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. And I was like, that was so awesome. I want to have a podcast too. And then she just like, cool, I'll send you all my information. And then I was with another production company. And then when she started hers, I moved over. But I don't know, I just liked you. And now I'm mixed into a Scorpio. So and then I started following Peyton on Instagram. And then I was like, oh, I like her so much too. So cut to here we are.
Here we are.
It really wasn't more than that. It was just like, they're awesome. I want to have them on my podcast.
And I remember you coming to me, telling me about your podcast because he knew I would love the title, Mother of the Mother. And he's like, she's doula, like immediately. Like, yeah. So.
And then we started talking, I think soon after we had met, you know, on a Zoom call where I wanted to have the both of you on mine.
Totally.
So I thought there'd be a lot of like cool synergy and be a great way to share both of your work. But, you know, I thought it would just be kind of a cool conversation. So I'm glad that we're finally getting it done for both of our podcasts.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love that. And, you know, for me, I'm all about the women and all about the moms. And so for me to actually be like, oh, I like that guy was cool, you know, and that's kind of rare for me. I'm just, I mean, no hate to the dudes listening, but I'm just kind of like unimpressed with men right now, you know, given the past.
Can't understand why.
Given the past year and a half and some decisions. But yeah, so anyway, for me, and I've shared this with you in DMs, it's like so beautiful to witness a man that's showing up the way that you're showing up and the way that you're creating this space for men to show up here. And so I really honor that. And like, it almost makes me tear up. And, you know, when you had Del on, like I sent you a DM, I was crying because and I don't cry. First of all, I don't cry. So the fact that I was crying, I was like, I'm going to share this with him because, there are so many thousands, I would say hundreds of thousands of women and mothers that are feeling unseen and unheard. And the way that Del shared on your podcast, like it gives me chills. That work is so important and it's crucial. Doesn't matter what accolades or how many likes or whatever, how many followers. It's like you created a space for Del to speak to mothers that way. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that and what you had shared after that podcast came out. And I think that podcast is a great example of why I do the podcast is to, you know, it's not always someone that people might know, but it's to show the human side versus bringing an expert on and sharing their wisdom.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was such a beautiful conversation with Del. And, you know, when you get into a podcast environment and you're curious, you start to learn things about people that you wouldn't otherwise maybe know in a conversation at a party or just hanging out. And So I'm so grateful for the platform to be able to do that with. And I'm excited to dig deeper into your story today and what's alive for you.
I want to hear all about both of you too.
Yes.
Get Peyton on in. So I'm going to pull a card because you have my favorite Earth Warriors Oracle card deck. So I'm going to do a card pull. Medicine of the Rainbow Jaguar. Ishel, I guess is how you pronounce that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. I'll just do a quick read.
Yeah.
I love it.
Story time. Because this is like a 4-page.
Yeah,
I'll just do a quick one.
Yeah, she goes deep on the in the guidebook.
She does. Ishel protects you now as you transition from one life phase to the next. With her rainbow light, this guardian goddess instructs you on how to use great power with wisdom to nourish only what is worthy. Using Jaguar medicine with perfect timing, she confronts that which is unworthy of her devotion, eradicating destructive forces and creative space for healing, relief, and rebirth. Her presence is the wild power of the Jaguar, the renewal, promise of the rainbow, and divine feminine creativity. All darkness shall be overcome. You are going through a transition. Cultivate hope and stay true to your intentions. Let nothing divert you from your true path. If you have a new project, vision, or lifestyle that you are seeking to bring into the world, Ishel is guiding and guarding you for a healthy birth. She also brings a message that there are times when fierceness is necessary. It is important that you cut off negative sources completely at this time and do not allow yourself to be used or exploited. This is not the time to indulge someone else's ego or go against your own inner knowing in order to give someone the benefit of the doubt. Trust your instincts and break immediately from what isn't right from you. This will bring you new opportunities and situations that are worthy of your passion, of your passionate devotion.
Hell yeah.
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 There's a
That
lot.
seems
There's,
apropos.
there's a lot coming for me coming up. First of all, it just if I can distill it down for people, it's figure out your fuck yes and stay with that, and everything else is a no. So get really clear about that. But also the other thing that came out, because we're currently in Mercury retrograde, so I'm curious about starting new projects, given that we're not supposed to be starting new projects. So do you have any thoughts around that, McLean?
Not really. You know, both and, which is my answer for everything. I feel like I need a t-shirt that just both and for every, it's like that we're holding all the paradoxes. So on one hand, yes. And on the other hand, sometimes I think beauty comes from Mercury retrograde because we also are kind of giving things space that they need because we're kind of like, I don't know. I don't freak out about them too much. I almost just kind of chuckle because I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like, I think they can be really actually great in getting us out of our thinking mind. So I actually think they can be real positive.
I mean, I've personally, over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of opportunity for a lot of stuff bubbling to the surface and opportunities to heal past wounds, to move forward, to weed the garden and clean up things. So yeah, I definitely was joking with some friends before it officially started, and a couple buddies were having gas line broke at their house, and some other like, fuck guys, it's not even Mercury retrograde. Like, get your shit together. So there's been this ongoing, there's like a 13 guy text where everybody's just sharing their retrograde stories, which
That's pretty funny.
Which they're totally new to. They only know about it because I said that. And so they're like posting memes about what to do and what not to do during Mercury retrograde. And so anyway,
That's funny.
And haven't done all the things that you're apparently not supposed to do.
Yeah, supposedly. It's just a guide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What comes up for you with the with that reading, with that card pull?
Well, the Jaguar, the keeper of the medicine space, and the ability to walk between the worlds and the transition spaces. And so immediately, yeah, that resonated, and seeing that, the keeper of that space.
Yeah. And you just had a huge transition with your son graduating.
Sure. Yeah. Big
2
milestone
days
for
ago.
us. Our firstborn, oldest child just graduated high school. So, yeah, it was a big week for us. So I don't even, regardless of what was squaring moons and retrograde or whatever, it was a week.
Yeah.
It surfaced a lot of emotions, and so beautiful and grateful, but it was a week. Right.
It's also an eclipse this week too. So lots of that. Lots of layers.
Yeah.
Lots of layers.
Oh, is that what? Yeah. What's the eclipse?
The eclipse and super full moon. So for full moons, it's not about, setting intentions for the month. It's about releasing. And so it's kind of like you lay the groundwork and the intention on the new moon. And then as you cycle through the month, then you release what is ready to be released from that cycle. And so it's kind of just a beautiful way to look at what you want to call in. And then you have to make space for that new abundance to come in. So you got to get rid of other stuff. And with the eclipse, what I've heard from a lot of different people I respect is you don't do, or it's looked down upon to do, the new moon intentions, because eclipses are so wild that you actually are kind of like, okay, I've been setting these intentions for this year or these cycles. Now I'm just really letting, universe take over and let the chips fall where they might. And eclipse is also just lifting those veils, seeing the shadows, going hard. It's almost like that, like lightning to bring about change. It doesn't always feel cozy and comfy, It can be kind of a wild ride, but.
Okay, so we got that going on, which is cool.
And that.
Yeah, his graduating was, I found myself reflecting on how I may have felt about it in the past, a sense of loss, a sense that I wish I could turn back the clock and have him be 6 years old again and have those years back. But I the only reason I reflected on that and it wasn't in the space is I just had such gratitude for the relationship that I have with him today. And just had this knowing that the concept of time is, I started to understand, how it is just a construct, and that there's no scarcity of what we have together. Not worried about, oh, I could die, something could happen. Like right now, this is awesome. And we've gotten to a place where we see one another, where, certainly in the past 6 months, he's taught me so much through him breaking his jaw, just what that meant for me and how I could show up for him and serve him in a way that would facilitate his healing and not put my shit, whatever that is, onto him. And really to also realize within that I need to take care of myself too. I need to honor the sadness I feel, the hurt, the loss of so much joy in watching him participate in sports. And that this was his senior year and he may never play basketball again.
Wow.
And just, we've just always loved, watching our kids do anything. And I think we've been pretty centered around not having them live out unfulfilled dreams of ours. Been very supportive and been, very vocal about sharing with them that we just love watching you in whatever the thing is.
What you love. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I guess anyway, through all that, I kind of lost my train of thought, but just, seeing your son, your kid, his face was swollen up to like almost twice the size and just not, it's just hard to see. Now, at the time, he actually wasn't in really any pain, but just to see your kid just knowing everything has changed. And I was fortunate enough to have, a dear mentor and brother who I reached out to right as it happened. I'm like, I know this is an opportunity for me to show up, and I don't want to fuck it up. Like, this is what happened. Like, how can I, again, not how can I do this right? And just the stuff he shared was kind of what I was just sharing. But we know that these are opportunities for Jake in this particular case, this hardship, this loss, there's something on the other side of that. If we allow him to go through that process. And he said, so hold that thought when you're maybe wanting to say how much this sucks, and also don't say this is all going to get better right away. Like, sit in what's actually happening. If it sucks in that moment, like, say it sucks in that moment, but don't rush to this is all going to be for the best. Mm-hmm. Just know that that's around the corner. And if we just can hold space for him to go through that, then it will happen, and it will happen in its own time. But what we found was, it was remarkable, the shift in him a month, 6 weeks after it happened. He was just a different kid. He just carried himself in such a different way, with a different just understanding or confidence. Mm-hmm. He just had this sense of ease about him that he didn't necessarily have before.
One thing that I was reminded of as Cal was sharing this story, what came up for me as a mother, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when I think, gosh, the hardest part after he broke his jaw was when he was coming out of surgery and his mouth was wired shut. And so he was coming out of the anesthesia. We were home, and he panicked because he couldn't open his mouth. He felt like he couldn't swallow. He was suffocating. And he was terrified. And we were both in the room, and my mothering instinct was to take over that, to be in that space. But I could see how connected Cal was with him in that moment. And I walked out of the room and took a minute to realize, like, how much I've showed up for my children, how anytime the kids were hurt, it was like he was pushed out of the way. I took over, took him to the emergency room, whatever, and realized this is not my moment. And he really needs to be there for Jake. And Jake is really craving that. It was obvious. And to walk out and allow that to unfold, and just take a deep breath and understand the power that was unfolding in that connection. And you handled it so beautifully with him, to calm him and be there. So I came downstairs, and I probably walked up about, 35 minutes later, and they were both asleep in the bed, cuddled. But, yeah, like, what an opportunity. And I think sometimes as mothers, at least for me, I sometimes denied him those opportunities in just connecting with my children the way, like, I know how to do. And that's just in my bones, as you said earlier. So
that's so beautiful. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's such an important part of mothering. And it's hard because we're so used to doing it, for years, for everything. Because we're so, also, obviously, when you have young children, we're physically, and our auras are so connected to, like, everything's so connected. And so it's like, yeah, get out of the way. I know how to do this.
Yeah,
I got it
put
down.
him on
like,
the
yeah.
I got
it. Totally. But what a beautiful example of parenting together.
Yeah. And I do want to highlight what you just said, and how hard that is for from your standpoint, like your preference is, I want to be the one, we all want to be the one that shows up, and to like put that bit of the ego aside and say, and to look at it objectively, like what is really needed here. And you were present enough to witness what was happening between Jake and I. And I don't know if it hurt or what you felt in that situation. But whatever it was, whatever tension you allowed, like you showed up for him the best way you could in what he needed. And I think that's been such an important lesson for me as well. Like, not what are my preferences for my relationship with my kid? What do they need from me? And as I've opened up to that idea and seen them for what they need, that's been the greatest shift that I felt in my relationship with my kids. It's like, it may not be what I think is the best thing for them, but the more I go into it, I realize I don't fucking know a lot of what's the best for them. I know what may or may not have worked for me a long time ago in completely different circumstances in a completely different world. What do they need right now? And, Peyton and I have talked about this. Sometimes, I really try to allow them to play at their edges, try to open up the boundaries so that they can figure out who they are. Now, in doing that, I'm going to open it up a little bit too much sometimes, and I got to rein it back in. But it's with the intention for their greatest growth. Not because I want to be the cool dad, but because I want to serve them in the best way that I can. And in doing that, you really have to question so much of what we're taught by society of how we're supposed to parent. It's fucking so wrong. What we've been taught.
Parented, what other people do.
Like, I want to be careful. Like, I don't want to say it's so wrong how we were parented, how we've been told to parent, right? And for all our parents listening right now, that is, I want to be clear that
love you, Mom.
Yeah, love you, memes. But it's really about. Like all the thinking about going out and you're out at a restaurant and your kid needs to be quiet. Like all the stuff is to keep your kid in line, discipline. There's so much of that. I just feel like this oppressive energy. And I'm
fitting them in the mold.
Yeah.
This is how you're a good child, a do good. Yeah.
And our middle son, who's 15, super interested in learning about psychedelic mushrooms and all that stuff. So is he just searching about it online and not saying anything? And like, he's coming to me because he knows I've had experience with it. And he knows I have all these books and I've talked about it on podcasts and I share openly. So he comes to me. And he even said to me the other day, he goes, Dad, there's just like, I don't know any other dads that would, with the exception of Kyle, our friend Kyle Kingsbury, but I don't know any other dads that would actually talk to their kids about this. So I just know, and I didn't need him to say that to confirm that it was the right thing to do. Because you know what? If he wants to try it, and I'll be clear, like he's too young to do it, in my opinion, so I'm not grooming him to try it this summer, but I'm giving him information that has been useful to me. And I'm creating trust in this relationship. And what I said to him was, listen, buddy, I'm trying to be open-minded here. And so part of the deal, the agreement here is that you are respectful to the process and for, the why behind this. But at the end of the day, I want me to be the first phone call if shit gets really fucked up for him. at any point, if he's like in a real bad situation, that I, just that he knows he can trust me, that I can hold it. I will not judge him. I will not be, disappointed. I would hope, but just like, I get it, man. We all fuck up. Like, let's not make it worse.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. I mean, that's what ideally we all should want, is for us to be the first place our kids come to. I mean, isn't like the whole point? And it's like literally the opposite for most families.
Yes.
And am I going to disappoint them?
I could never, don't tell mom, don't tell dad. You can never tell them, it's like
they won't understand.
Yeah. And it just sets such a foundation of mistrust. It's so sad. Yeah.
Because parents are very penal when the kid, quote unquote, fucks up, and they're just trying to figure out life.
Totally. Right. How can we learn? How can we guide them through this experience that they're undergoing? Right. Isn't that our job, to be guides and be, I love the analogy of a kite. We have 3 teens. So it's like they have to fly and soar, and they're going to hit trees and hit the ground and just, be taken with the wind. But do they know that they have someone on the ground, standing strong, holding on to reel them back in when they need it? And I mean, I love that, but you've got to give them a line to do that and to explore and play, but to know that someone's got them and that they can come back and be grounded with their parents. So it's not always easy, but I think they feel very comfortable, and it is, you feel like, it's not open doors anymore. It's like a window being cracked. And so you have to take those opportunities to connect with them, and to do so with curiosity and without judgment, so.
And be okay. Like, again, like,
right. Like, not panic. Like, why is he asking about that? Oh my God. Does that mean he's going to do this, that? Yeah. Like,
by the way,
curious. And this is what some of the kids are talking about. And, kids are going through a really hard time right now. It's been a hard year for these kids, and people are experiencing depression. And what does that look like? And how can I help my friends? And does this really help? And what does that look like? He heard that it really helped his dad. And so what does that look like? And so.
Because they're going to get their information.
Yep.
And what I don't want the information, I don't want him to think that pharmaceuticals, painkillers are the way that you have an altered state, because that could be a message he gets. Or be fixed. Yeah. And so when I say, these things are really helpful when done with intention, and sometimes you're going to fuck it up, and or sometimes you're going to do it for fun. Like, it's all good. But these over here are a fucking no-go. And this is why. Our friend Sheldon, he almost died twice. And it's because he got hooked on painkillers for a long-term wrist injury. Like, this can happen to people who are super grounded, and it gets out of control. So let's have those conversations rather than not talk about our buddy Sheldon who almost died. Like, there's no shame in any of this. Like, that's part of it also. Like, dude, I'll share with you anything that you ask me. He's, Dad, have you tried this one? And it's like the 5-MeO DMT. It's just, the Sonoran Desert toad, smoking toad venom. I'm like, and I had to think for a second. I was like, okay, well, like, yeah, I've done that, and I've done it a couple times, and this is what it's like. And I don't recommend that right out the gate. But I also need to be very clear with him that I have done these things. And if I'm not honest with him and he does find out, well, then there's a breach of that trust. It's like, fuck, what else has Dad lied to me about?
Right. Totally.
So it creates a ton of tension for most parents, because they think they're sending the wrong signal. I'm not condoning him doing it right now. Right. But I'm advocating for him getting the right information, or what I feel, my opinion of what the right information is. And then again, to open up that the conversation for that and everything else.
And education is not encouragement. It's that. It's a conversation.
Boom.
It's understanding.
That's a good line right there.
Thank you.
Bam.
Bam.
Say that
Quote
again.
card.
Say that again. If so people don't have to hit the 30-second back button.
I use it often when talking about sexuality for young women, because a lot of times as parents, we're afraid if we talk about it, that means they're gonna go do it, and then that we're condoning it. But it's not. It's that this is a natural feeling to experience as part of our growth, as part of our beauty of development. And we need to understand it. We need to understand why our body's changing. We need to understand why our brain's changing, why we're feeling this connection with another human being. And it's so important. So yeah, the quote is, education is not encouragement. It's that. It's understanding your why, and understanding yourself, right?
And a lot of in my opinion, the big part of education is having your own experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
The gnosis.
And that's, what's that?
Gnosis.
Yeah, gnosis.
Gnosis.
Look at you. Did you win a spelling bee? Look at you bragging over here.
My name is Peyton. Gnosis. Gnosis. Gnosis.
Yeah. What's up? Fuck.
Never won a spelling bee.
We met at a spelling bee.
Never won a spelling bee. I actually don't even think I made it through one round.
No,
and we may even have to
Not a strong
Google and
speller.
make sure I spelled it correctly there.
Sounds right.
No, you did.
We're going to go with it.
Yeah.
I'm
And
feeling
also,
really good right now.
Pharma is not working for most people, so we're also in a massive change, and this education is so important. And, as we know, or a lot of us know, like, this was medicine in the 50s, in the 40s, right? And it helped a lot of people. And now there's a resurgence, thank God, to learn more about this. And it's a fine point, because like I come from a lot of addiction and suicide, and so it's a fine line for me, like I'm like fast forwarding as you're talking about your teenagers, like I'm not ready for it yet. My oldest will be double digits in the fall, but I also know that there is a beautiful way to use those medicines. I fully and really embrace that. I personally haven't done it yet, because sobriety, I don't use I don't even know what to call them.
Sure.
Drugs, alcohol. I don't do any of that because of my own history. It doesn't align with my body, but I'm very open to the possibility of someday, if I feel called to do,
That's the key.
Yeah.
You just said it. If I feel called to do, and that's the for lack of a better term, that's the prescription for anybody. Like if you feel called to it, then that's the time. But otherwise, and listen, I the first time I did it, I don't know that I didn't consciously say that I was called to it, but I was ready for it. I was ready for what it offered me to open up a perspective into my life that I didn't have access to, a lens without self-judgment, without regret, with just a very objective look at like, oh, this is how you're showing up, or this is how you're not showing up. And the choice is yours to change that. So
it sounds awesome. I mean, everyone that I know that has used the different modalities sounds amazing. And I also kind of feel like when the right teacher for me or facilitator, I'll be drawn to it, because it just hasn't resonated yet, but it does sound.
Yeah. And the right medicine and the right, there's so
many options.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but you're tuning in, which is what, a lot of people don't do. I didn't do, now I've been offered, you can imagine in this community here in Austin, there's a lot of that. So I'm offered often opportunities, and I would say, I first did it in October of 2017. I'd say for the next couple of years, if I was offered, I wouldn't necessarily say be a big yes, but I would want to, because I was curious about this particular medicine. I would say in the past year plus, I've really tuned into what do I need right now. And it's not been medicine. And it's been a while since I've been in that space. Shit, have I been in it since before COVID?
I know, what is time? I mean, time, like,
Yeah.
it's the definition of time is so just, I don't even know what it is. Like it exists, so it's not obsolete, but it doesn't mean what it did a year ago to me. It's so
Tell me,
bizarre.
okay, tell me more about that.
I don't have a firm definition for myself yet, because it feels elusive to me. It's like I was saying, like, you could tell me you've been in Austin for a week and I'd be like, yeah, it's been a great week. I've been here for like 36 hours. I used to be so great in time and like very linear. And now I don't even remember like when I met people. Sometimes I also feel so connected to people on Instagram. You know, you could be like, oh, you know, Cal and Peyton, you've met them multiple times. I'd be like, sure. Yeah. You know, but I have no kind of reference now of, oh, it's been 2 years since I last saw you, or 3 years, or, you know, it's like, and so there's that, like on the physical plane. And then I also feel like I'm stepping into this work of really healing relationships on the continuum of time. So, you know, like with inner child work, like knowing I can work with little McLean and it's still going back in time, which will also affect me now. So I'm kind of using that example in my other relationships too.
Yeah.
But I don't fully know how to express that.
Well, I wonder, I think I got you. Tell me if it's, I feel like there's been like this ascension from this idea of that linear time, because, you know, as you're talking about it, it doesn't matter the last time you saw someone.
Right. Yeah.
But we you know, we're taught to believe that matters, to remember stuff like that. But what you're saying is, all I know is like I'm connected to this person. That's all. And so for me, it's like moves. And I think ascension is actually the proper term, that you've moved out of such an attachment to that place. And I also think for me, let me know if this resonates, what happened over the last year plus, all these assumptions we made about the future, we realized that none of it bears anything. So what is time when we think about the future? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We really don't know.
We don't. And we never did. And so it actually feels so great and freeing. And on my drive over here, I was like, love it here, but we're not moving here. We're moving to Tennessee at some point and living in LA. And then I'm like, you know what? Maybe we are moving here. I have no idea. I literally have no idea what's happening.
Yes.
You know, and I'm okay with that. Like I'm really okay in my life on the daily now.
Right. Letting go of that illusion of control.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Like where we're going and like what we're doing and what we're saving for and all those things, like, which, you know, we live in a world where those things do matter, you know. I mean, we're not like selling everything and just going to the woods, but I'm so less attached to everything. It's wild when I think about at night, I'm daydreaming about moving to Tennessee and I'm thinking about what I'm going to take. And it's so little. It's like one suitcase and my kitchen stuff.
No shit.
Yeah. I'm like, none of the furniture's coming. Don't need the books. Have my kids, my husband. Honestly, like maybe one painting. It's so freeing. I'm just like, I can literally leave tomorrow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it feels really refreshing. Like that's what this year has brought me. I mean, I've always been kind of unattached to things because I rebelled against my family, which had a lot of stuff and more hoarders and very attached to materialism. And so I think I just went the opposite way. But yeah, this past year, like took it next level.
Like legit hoarders or just
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, let me
'Cause that's-
clear that up.
We can drop into that for a minute.
No, they were not scary hoarders.
Tell me more.
They had beautiful homes and beautiful things, but just a lot of abundance, you know, like old Southern abundant, you know, like just like my great grandmother. But like, I mean, I guess this could be hoarders. I mean, everything was like beautifully organized, but like you'd open up her closet and there'd be like 10 of the same shampoo, you know, or like 20 of the exact same shade of lipstick. Like, and she died when she was 98 and she still had like new shoes every year and new dresses made for her. Like she was a consumer.
Yeah.
So I just grew up seeing a lot of stuff, and also in the South, like everything's kind of passed down. And I was kind of like,
You're like, I'm good.
I'm good. I don't need it. I don't need it. So, I know this is such a huge topic, marriage, but,
we don't talk about our marriage.
and please go to Cal's episode. What number was that? Do you remember?
The
show notes. You guys
same
together?
partner, new marriage.
Yeah.
Ours.
Oh yeah, we'll have that in the show notes.
Such a great episode.
Thank you.
I mean, so beautiful. And I think I mentioned to you on the phone the other night, I was listening to it. So I sleep with my kids still. It's like,
awesome.
You know, the sleep training, it's so funny, like in quotation marks, sleep training. Because we've done
Sometimes
always.
we still do too. So like just
I'm just in this phase now where I'm
do they ever
loving
grow
it. I'm
up?
just
No.
loving it. So I'm like, it's all great. But anyway, I often fall asleep listening to a hypnosis session or meditation or sometimes a podcast. So anyway, I was trying to get prepared. So I listened to that podcast and I fell asleep. So I think I woke up and you were talking to like a tennis player. So I was like, oh, I just listened to like tons
Brandon
of his
Hawk,
podcasts.
yeah.
Like, so you're like deep in my unconscious mind. But it was such a beautiful share. I just loved all of you. I mean, all of you, the two of you sharing all of your ups and your downs. And I just think it's so important to share the ups and downs of marriage because we don't see it and we don't really talk about it in a way of learning and wanting to move through it, or also being open to it not quote unquote working out or not staying together. Sure. And, you know, so much of what you shared, Peyton, was just so profound. And I loved, and I'm sure you had your own journey like in the real time of it, but when you spoke about it, of just being so honest about maybe it doesn't work out. And I think that's just such a beautiful lens to look through because I also feel like sometimes breaking up or going your separate ways is the bravest and the healthiest thing for everyone involved, including the kids. But, you know, it's so interesting because I honestly don't have a lot of marriages that I see that I would want or anything close to it. And they're happy, but it just for me, like, and I'm a unique, probably quirky person, but, it was just really beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that insight because I just think so many people can relate, you know? And it's, it was brave.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Sam from Soulfire has been like, y'all gonna need to get back on. Like that was your best episode. People like had the most downloads and.
Well, I think because, I mean, relationships are hard, right? And I think often as parents, we want to be stability for our children and not let them, kind of what you were alluding to earlier, not let them see here the challenge. But this is an opportunity for them to understand relationships and how to work through them and that they can be challenging. And then sometimes walking away from a marriage means like it's the ultimate respect for your partner that you've shared and developed this life with. Saying, I respect you enough to allow you to have this life that you deserve. Yeah. And right now, we're not doing that for one another. We're not accentuating our best selves there. But I think for us was, you know, allowing that relationship to end and to do all the things, you know, so often in marriages, what happens is when people separate, they start doing all the things that their heart's desires. They start now caring about their health. They join the gym, they're taking the class, they've left that job, they're making all these changes. And now they're the person that your partner had been desiring and wanting and wanted to connect with. And so why don't we allow that new version of ourselves to surface within the relationship?
I love that.
One thing that I said that I think really resonated with people is that we didn't want to give someone else a better version of ourselves.
Thank you for saying that, because that happens so often.
Yeah.
The next woman that gets the dude you fucking
That
wanted.
you're
And
like,
you
no.
worked on that dude for many years. And then they lose the 30 pounds and they love their life and they're meditating. And so thank you just for saying that, because I think you guys, that's just a beautiful example of like, why not try to be the people we want? And if it still doesn't work out, it'll still be plan B, but like give ourselves that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. But also give ourselves that opportunity. Allow, I feel like this has been, I think the biggest tool in a relationship is allowing one another to become new versions of ourselves. Because it's very easy to say, who do you think you are? Becoming this and doing this now and starting this career and now acting like this, to put them in their place. Like what? We change each individually. We change daily. And if you're not allowing your partner to grow, how is your relationship going to grow? But that can be really scary. It's like, I know at least it was for me, Cal left the trading world. He was starting these new ventures and then completely changing how he lived his daily life and what he was diving into and his curiosities, and it could have been very easy for me to just be like, what are you doing? Like, that's not you. But it is also scary. It's like, wait a minute, is this new version of him going to still love me? But I've got to be willing to take that risk because he's got to live his life, right? And I ultimately want to be with someone who's authentically, genuinely, fully expressing themselves in their lifetime. And he needs to do the same for me, or at least I would hope he would do the same for me. But I think often in relationships, because that can be so scary, we don't support this evolution of self. So I really think that's one of the most significant things in growing a relationship and in a marriage is to, yes, allow one another to continue to be new versions. And sometimes you may need to try it on and it doesn't fit. And it's like, but like give them that space and freedom and support.
Yeah. I mean, I think well said. I think
Thanks, babe.
I think we can tend to hold on really tightly to those relationships. And as you said, not want them to change for fear of someone outgrowing or having new interests or preferences. And to that, I was willing to allow that if myself or Peyton were on our, we're each on our own journey.
Mm-hmm.
And if we woke up one day and said, this just isn't for me anymore,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think Peyton or we don't need this, not what it was, the current state it was in, to sustain us, because it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And when we let go of the outcome, I really don't want this marriage to ever end. So I'm going to do things that keep it safe, even though, I know things could be better and I'm not really living my full life, but we're good.
Mm-hmm.
We have a good life. We have good kids and we have good friends. That's just like, it's such an old paradigm. I think a lot of people live that way. And I was willing to go on this path of figuring out who I was because I didn't know who I was. And if at the end of that path, Peyton wasn't a part of it, I was willing to give that up because, I've got one life. Peyton has one life here in this
Lifetime.
One life, this lifetime.
In this incarnation. But I think there's so much fear around a marriage not working out, what people think, divorcing, splitting stuff up, the kids and all that. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. It's not that I have never thought about that. I have, but I'm like, at what cost?
Yeah.
So what is going
Your
to
livelihood.
get me to live my full life? And if I can do it within the framework of this relationship, that's my preference. Mm-hmm. But it's not the outcome that I'm striving to make sure I land on. But it's something that it is my intention. And I think just having the space and the freedom to play there feels really good, and that's been, it hasn't been easy. There's times when that self-interest turns into selfishness, and that doesn't feel good either. And so it's very nuanced. And, I think when we're at our best, we're communicating those needs to one another. And when we're not communicating those needs. We're triggered and we're shut down. And, we still go through stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's quite simply, relationships are hard. Mm-hmm. And don't expect them to be easy. And if they're real easy, to check in there too, that you're maybe not challenging the relationship enough. You're not pushing the edges. You're not allowing it to be what it really could be. You're playing it safe. And I'm not saying like bring in other partners and do like none of that shit. I'm saying, are you willing to live in the fullest expression of yourself to see what that can do for that unit?
Yeah. And I think, there was a time where we just got so comfortable and a little complacent that you're just kind of going through the motions and then realizing, wait a minute, we know too much to just do this. Yeah. And we respect each other too much to not allow one another to live their life fully to their highest expression. So how can we find that individually and, can reconsider our union and what could that look like? And it's also exploring that, like what could that look like? What if, I shared this with my friend recently, for me, McLean, I really didn't see us growing older together. I didn't see us in our marriage. Like my story, the narrative was, as we grew older, we would separate or he would find someone else so for me, the narrative, I didn't have that. And I'm like, well, what if, we continue to fall madly in love as we grow older? Like, why is that not a possibility? Why is it not a possibility that, we raise these kids and we try new things and we move to new places and we travel and continue just to find new ways to love one another?
It's beautiful. And I think so much of that is just looking outside of the box. I do think that's a plus of this past year.
Absolutely.
We are all doing that to lesser or greater degrees. And we just, it's like that programming of what things should look like. And then when you usually we have to go through some pain or something that triggers us to question all that. And then it's like, oh, it actually could be anything.
Yeah.
Let's just try it. Let's see.
Yeah.
And I love that piece of the respect. It's like ideally you respect your partner enough to want them to be happy and for you to be happy.
Yeah.
And then work out the details.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because they're going to be happy without you doesn't mean that takes away it's not a finite amount of resources. You can both be happy.
Yeah. It's not either or.
That's right. You know, and I think one thing that came to mind as you were talking, Pei, was that, you know, a lot of people will say, well, we never fight and, we get along great. And like we went through, it's not like we're fighters, but there were periods we weren't fighting, but we weren't connected at all. It's hard to fight when you're just shut down.
Totally.
And so I just I invite anyone to kind of look deeper into that. If that's part of your relationship, part of the story that, we never fight.
Yeah.
Well, what's really there?
Yeah. And everyone's so different. We're all such different beings. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
I'd love to ask, kind of turn over to the both of you now.
Oh. Hey,
because you both do such amazing work supporting women, in particular mothers. I know Peyton's done a lot of work with teen girls, and so there's kind of anywhere that this can go. But I guess one thing I don't want to jump into the fourth trimester just yet, but I want to eventually. I would love for you each to speak about, this is kind of for the men out there.
Oh, okay.
Because I think my eyes were open when Peyton became a birth doula, and I started to see in that particular space, when we had a birth doula at her births, it allowed me to show up in a way that felt really good and comfortable, versus trying to do all the things that a birth doula would do without even knowing any of them. And so I think there was such a benefit to me just showing up as Cal in that process and just loving on her. And so I don't know, just like what inspired you to that work? And I just leave it open-ended for that. And I'm actually not sure how that relates to men. I think the 40 days is going to be really important for men to understand, women as well. We'll get to that in a minute though.
Well, and I would love if you would go ahead, because I'm curious, that we're both doulas, and a doula is someone who's in service to a woman, someone who mothers the mother. And so what drew you to the work of doulaing women in the postpartum period?
So first of all, when you were just sharing that, Cal, the first thing that came through was my work starts, well, really for myself, but for women to remember their innate power, period, first. It's very easy to only want to concentrate on the women for me. What I know now from doing this almost a decade is we need the men on our side. So I love now working with couples in my coaching, because I do a lot of the work with the women, but we have to bring the men in, because that is how we really will get change going. But women have to know it first within themselves, to own it and then demand it and ask for it, and to be able to share with their partners, because more often than not, the partners want to be there, and we are in this place, we are shifting consciousness right now. So I just wanted to say that I'm really speaking for the women and the men, because there are so many amazing men that are learning how to step up, because they weren't taught. We weren't taught. I didn't know. I wasn't modeled this, and I'm sure you weren't either. And so, looking at my own partner, and he was so great. He was such a great support. Like at the first birth, we did the Bradley method, 3 months, once a week. Really wanted a natural birth at the birth center, and he was amazing. And it was our first birth, ended up having to transfer to the hospital, and we were all kind of like deer in headlights. And then cut to almost 6 years later, my home birth, and my husband caught my baby. And it was so incredible, just that loop and how that was healing for him and his relationship with his parents. And so I really got into this work. So as you mentioned earlier, I went to Hampshire College.
Yeah, what up?
down the street from Amherst for Callahan. And we were the weird hippies down the lane where you went to get your drugs.
Yeah. I wasn't into them back then, unfortunately.
Hampshire Halloween is a known thing. But randomly, I took a course on midwifery. Super random. Didn't think about it. I was just like, that seems cool. And so, a little seed was planted, and then cut to, acting and doing all the other things. And then when I knew I wanted to become pregnant, I had friends that had home births. So I was like, yes, sign me up. I'm so into the natural birth thing. And then, all of that just really aligned with my whole lifestyle, everything. And, the classes, the midwives, everything was kind of for the birth. And someone I think had mentioned postpartum doula, but it was like one woman. She was an old Kundalini Sikh, had no website, couldn't find her number. It was like 10 years ago. So lots changed. And so then after I had my first daughter and the birth went very differently. And I remember saying to my friends, like, I'm just going to be really honest and tell you when I'm in this right now, what it's actually like, because no one's talking the truth. And so for me, it really wasn't even a conscious really thought. It was just like, my heart was like, I have to help women do this because like that shit sucked and women don't need to be doing this alone and everyone's flailing and it's just not working. And so that's really how I got into the postpartum. And I love birth and I've trained to be a birth doula, but for me, the niche was postpartum because it just wasn't enough of it. And for me, I'm also squeamish. I faint when I see blood. Actually, so the birth that I attended before I had my first child, I fainted. Like the doctor had to run over to me with smelling salts. It was very embarrassing. And I came out to the waiting room and the family was like, why are you gray and why are you eating a popsicle? And I was like, I fainted. So that wasn't that cool. So it's just not my calling. So for the postpartum, for me, like it is, I love the healing work, the food, all the Ayurvedic healing, like there's so much beauty in there. But for me, if like I boil it down, it's really the entry point for me to help women remember their power so that they can mother and be the whole human they want to be. So it's not just like the postpartum for the postpartum sake. It's because it sets you up for the rest of your life. Yep. So, and it keeps evolving. I'm sure I want to hear about your work too, but like as our kids grow, it evolves, and I'm so interested in what you're doing with the teens because I've got a preteen and that's always been on my back burner of like, I'm going to just keep evolving with what she needs.
Sure.
Because I want, and I know you're doing this. I want to hear all that you're doing with the period and, menstruation, all of that, because I want it to be so different for my daughter because I was a tomboy. I was, flat chested. I was the tallest of my entire grades until 7th grade. I was an athlete. And, when I got my period, I was so ashamed. I hated it. I was in total denial. I wouldn't talk to my mom about it. She hadn't really talked to me about it. And we were actually talking about it a couple of weeks ago. She was visiting me in LA. And I wasn't saying it like in a blaming way at all. I was just like, I just didn't own that part of myself. I had no idea. It felt awkward and gross and weird. And I don't want that. I want it to be beautiful and empowering for my daughter and for her to be able to come to me and see it in her friends that come before her and feel like it's cool and it's exciting and it's a rite of passage. So yeah, like all my work keeps informing as I get to be a better mom continually and show up in new ways and heal those parts of myself too.
Exactly. I love that you said that because you do, right?
Yeah, I'd love for you to talk to that. That would be
well, and then I'll go back about the doula, but my intention, I do a mother-daughter class, Awakening to the Purpose and Power of Your Period. And it's a mother-daughter. And so often I get asked, well, can I just send my daughter? And the intention of the program is to awaken the daughter and heal the mother. So because so much of at least women my age didn't have this connection or had so much shame around this process, or maybe not even shame, but just not information and understanding the purpose of why their body was changing and what that meant. and what those gifts were. So much is about healing, your entry into womanhood. Right. And so, yeah, for me as a doula, so I was a birth doula and we share the exact same mission. I just saw my entry point a little earlier. And so for me, reminding a woman of the capability of their bodies, the capability of their babies, why does the body respond differently at home than it does at a hospital? In nature, mammals give birth in a dark cave at night. Why do women go in labor at night? Right? Because they feel safe. There's not predators out hunting, right? And so the muscles relax. And, why do the muscles tighten when they feel threatened? And how does that impact the intensity of a contraction? And why does labor slow when you get to a hospital? It's because your body doesn't feel safe. And so I think when a woman can really understand what their process is and what their body knows to do, then the birth is approached with calm and confidence. And I really think it's so important for a woman transitioning into this new phase of her life, into motherhood, that innate knowing of being a mother is activated. And I think birth gives us that opportunity. And I think when we suppress it through instant meds or inductions and things like that, and granted, there's a time and a place for everything. I'm grateful for technology and the advances we've made. However, if we're denied that opportunity to be initiated into this mothering phase and that innate knowledge, and that we know we are the best advocate for our child, and that we're not deferring to experts, but really tuning into our bodies and what we know our child needs. Our medical system has made a bit of a separation as we know best and let's defer to the experts. And there's a time and a place to consult with experts. But until you know yourself, like how do we know ourselves? How do we know our bodies? How do we know our children so that we can go advocate and work with experts, right? Because we know our normal, we know our baby. And so how can we work together in collaboration there, but not to completely sever our knowing that has served us for centuries, right? Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of the healing, is just reconnecting to our knowing and that mothering spirit that is so strong and so powerful. And I really feel that, right, that helps heal the lineage forwards, backwards. And if we can draw the men in and to help them understand, right? I mean, I'm sure like the experience for you witnessing our first birth was induced. We were induced and had a number of medical interventions. And then our third was, undisturbed at home. So I think what a gift to be able to see a woman in that experience. So I'm curious, like what that was like for you, and for you to receive our child in your own hands, and be brought into that. And then now, like I'm all over the place, but now, being able to inform and teach Cal, like the beauty of our daughter's growing body and the importance of that. And even seeing the cycle of life that I'm in, and what that means, and now moving into a new cycle of life and what that will look like, and these enormous opportunities that women have with our cyclical natures. So yeah, what was that like birth experience like for you?
I mean, being at home, it's like such, it's, just think about, would you rather be in a hospital or be at home? And like, I just trusted you that this was the right thing to do.
Well,
I didn't have fear, I didn't have fear around that. What are you gonna say? I want to go back to that, because someone had asked us a question about this yesterday. Like, how do you trust yourself? How do you trust
your mothering instinct? How do you build that? And so we were having this conversation yesterday, but I remember when I knew that home birth was right for this pregnancy with our daughter. And I remember printing out abstracts and things and like giving him information and like doing a pitch, like, because we didn't really know anyone who had had a home birth. And so just presenting to Cal, like, hey, this is like what I know is right for this pregnancy and this birth. And here's some supporting data. And as my partner and the father of this child, I respect, what it is that you feel is in best interest and, safety for our child. But here you go and let me know what you think. So I think it's also being comfortable of trusting a mother's instinct, which I think could be very hard for a man.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, oh, but wait, this is what I know. And this is what the experts say. And my wife is telling me something completely different.
Yeah. I want to speak to that really quickly.
Yes, please do.
So when you were talking, I really agree with you. And that's what I do with my coaching too, because what I realized over time, it's like, I can't teach anyone about postpartum when you're in postpartum because you're just like in it. So it's working with women throughout their pregnancy to plan, right, for their whole postpartum. And in so doing, for me, pregnancy is such a deep, deep spiritual journey. I mean, kind of nothing bigger. I mean, birth and death, right? Two sides of the same coin. So for a lot of women, we were not modeled that. We weren't taught that. But if you can get that kind of download even before you conceive, you're just going to be so much better off to do that work and to really be present for it and to allow all the stuff from your past or your lineage to come up to be healed. And it's amazing when you can do that as couples too. We don't always get that. Sometimes it's like the second, third kid, right?
Sure.
Certainly was for me. So I think too that when the men or partners, let's say we're talking about husbands, but it could be female too.
Sure.
When the non-birthing person sees you own that part and see your confidence, more often than not, they're going to get on board with you because you are in your power. Yeah. It's this wavering that is not really helping anybody. And so that's what I see a lot is culturally too, we're asking too many questions outside of ourselves. Just fucking own your power, And I didn't know that till after I had my first one. And then I remember, like, cause I was driving 2 days later, it was insane. And like being at a cafe. And I just remember being like, all these like LA, like cutie actresses. And I was, like picking up a latte and I was just like, I just had a baby come out of my vagina. I'm magic. What are you doing today? Like it was such this like power that I had not had in my life. Yeah. And I was like, I'm a fucking badass. And with my second, it was like, I knew I could do it. There was no question. Yeah. And so immediately I was like, I'm doing a home birth. My husband was like, yeah, awesome. Because he knew I could do it and I was owning it and I wasn't actually questioning. I was telling him and he was like, great, let's set you up, And I also had the confidence to ask for that too. Yeah. With the second kid, I was like, for having a second kid, you're throwing money at me. I'm getting all the things. I'm getting the acupuncture and the chiropractic and all the postpartum healing. Like this is, because it's worth it because I didn't do it with my first. And you will spend the time, money, not to mention the pain on healing it.
You will.
So it's like, just set yourself up, and that's what I work on with all my clients. Even before you're pregnant, save your money for that. You don't need to drop $100,000 on a wedding, or 50 or 20 even. It's like, save that for your birth you want and your postpartum healing for your family. Like it's just education. I get really riled up.
I love it. But I think that's the energy that Peyton came to me with. I mean, she had the abstracts. I didn't read any of them because I knew like she is so clear about this and who the fuck am I to challenge it?
Right.
Where I could see if she were wishy-washy and there was some fear in her that maybe it wasn't the right decision, she was very clear. And we had 2 case studies, our 2 kids beforehand. It's like, oh, the second one was a little better than the first, but it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Well, it was, undisturbed birth at a hospital. And then it was like, okay, like what can I control? My environment. So.
Yeah. And just being at home, and it made sense to me that the comfort, again, if you believe in your body's ability to do that, women have been doing it for centuries out of hospitals with great success. When you feel that, now you're in your home, I went and made some coffee, and it was just such a cool environment to be in. And then when Hope was born, literally in our bed minutes later on her chest, I'm like, oh my God, there's nowhere to go. We're here.
And on call. She was born in her.
So was Goldie.
No way. That's so rare.
I know. Wow. It's so rare.
So cool. Okay.
Come back to that in a second.
But one of the, and I had mentioned it earlier, but it was the first time I had heard a doctor, and I believe it was Dr. Rose?
Rossi,
looked at Peyton and said, you are not to do a thing for the next 6 weeks. And he looked at me and said, you're fucking doing everything or get help or whatever. She's not doing anything.
Mm-hmm. Her job is to rest and feed her baby. Rest and feed. Rest and feed. 6 weeks.
And so I know you have that's 42 days technically. You have the 40-day tradition. So that's something that you obviously believe in as well. So I'd love to hear like the backstory on that.
Yeah. Just because I will forget, because there's so many things to talk about. Being born in the call, for those of you that don't know, is when a baby is born in their amniotic sac or partial. So it is supposedly like 1 in a million. I don't know if it's really a million, but it's a small percentage, and it is supposed to be very auspicious and bring babies that are psychic and very attuned with magic. And I really see that with my baby girl. I mean, I feel like both my girls, but she is very psychically tapped in. Like she says stuff and then it happens. It's pretty wild. And she's 3.5.
I will say this about Hope. Her intuition is strong.
Yeah.
Like about people. Mm-hmm. She knows people. Yeah. She sees them for a minute. And she's just like, that guy's a tool. Yeah. She'll say it like that, right? She's like, oh, I really like them. Yeah, like it's taken me.
She said, it's taken me around that person.
Yeah, it's taken me 1.5 years, but I think you're right. Yeah, I think
they're so attuned. Yeah, my girlfriend who was my birth doula, when Goldie Wolf was born, she said it looked like she had like an astronaut's helmet, and that she just saw these big blinking eyes because my daughter has massive blue eyes and eyelashes, and she said it was like this big eyes looking at her when she came out.
Well, and when Hope came out, so she had a velamentous cord insertion. Am I saying that? Velamentous cord insertion. So where her placenta was inserted, where the cord was inserted on the placenta wasn't very healthy. So she came a few weeks earlier, right? Our babies know when it's time. Her placenta was very small, and she had a couple of wraps, a nuchal wrap, and then around the body. But what was so beautiful about being home and being with these doctors who just really trusted the process, and about her being born in her sac, is that so she had this cushion that she needed, this buoyancy, right, that she needed for this particular time. And then we actually broke the bag to catch underwater, because it's like holding a water balloon underwater, right? Yeah. And they could see the tension, right? So which when the cord is pulled very tight, it keeps the oxygenated blood from circulating. And so they did this beautiful maneuver of not letting her continue to descend, but kind of fishtail her out so it didn't put any more pressure. Oh, wow. And it took her about almost 60 seconds to take her first breath. But because where we were and at this moment, she was never moved from my chest. And I remember looking at Cal as we were getting support just in case. I looked at him and I'm like, she's fine. Like I could feel on my chest that she was about to breathe. Like I could feel everything. There was no concern at all for me. And I just remember rubbing her chest and asking Cal to rub her feet, like just rub her feet. I'm like, she's fine. And then they ended up giving her a little oxygen and she pinked up immediately. But I didn't have the scenario of her being taken away from me, her cord being cut, which would have been very challenging for her to have had that clamped because she needed every bit of the oxygenated blood until she could stimulate lung function. And that process was allowed. And because we didn't potentially artificially rupture her bag, like she needed that based on her orientation in the sac. And sometimes we forget that because we're not being as patient with the birth process. And for her in particularly, because we were home and because there were no interventions, it led to, I would say, a very healthy birth experience that possibly could have gone a little awry in a different circumstance.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what made me think of that.
It's just so powerful because when you are home, you're given the space and time to trust that biology often knows what's up more than we do.
Yeah. And then me not having that postpartum perceived trauma of being separated from my child not being separated from me, which we know what that's like when we separate mother from baby, that does immediately for a child. So, she was allowed there. So, and we're going back to the 40 day.
Yeah. Thank you. I love hearing birth stories.
Me too.
I could just sit here all day and hear every detail of all your births. I'd love it. So really every tradition around the world, but ours has traditions of postpartum. And it doesn't even have the word postpartum. I mean, in some languages, there's not even a word for postpartum because it's just a continuation of life. It's just what you do to keep mom alive and baby alive. End of story. It's like you have the soups and the teas and the special traditions to help mom heal from the birth and the pregnancy. And then to feel good in her body. So she's producing milk that keeps the baby alive, that keeps the species alive. You know, it's like very basic stuff. It's very simple, but it isn't necessarily easy because in the United States, we were not, most of us, I'd say 99% of us, we were not modeled that. We don't know that. We're very separate from our traditions. So the way that I have learned is through the lens of Ayurveda, which is Indian science. And for me, kind of with everything in my life, I trust the test of time. And Ayurveda has been used for thousands of years as a real medicine. I mean, you go to India, there are Ayurvedic hospitals. The last thing you're going is the Western hospital that's going to cut something out of you. You're going to do everything through Ayurveda first. And it's powerful and it's kept people alive and healthy for thousands of years. And it's really honoring each person's constitution and body. Like it's very simple, really. The more, you know, there are tons of Ayurvedic books for anyone listening that's interested that are just beautiful and learning your body because there's no right or wrong. And, you know, I'm 43 now and I've been interested in health and diets since I was a teenager and I was like into raw foods in the 90s. And, you know, at this age, I'm like, I don't think there is a health food. I don't think there's anything that's really, besides like water, that's good for every single person. I really don't. And Ayurveda honors that. And so,
and what give us a couple books. Cause you mentioned for those listening, I'm like, don't leave them hanging.
I'll have to put them in the show notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Because I have some great cookbooks that are great for dipping your toe in. I'll put those in the show notes.
Got it.
But there are quite a few that my teacher, who I also put in the show notes, Julie Bernier in LA, she just recently moved to Oaxaca. But she was a big part of my learning about this. I was already doing it because it was just very intuitive. And then I went deeper with her. in LA. But really, we have three, this is like very like 101 basic, but we have three doshas. Most of us are all three mixed, usually with two stronger ones. So there's Pitta, Vata, Kapha. What makes it easy for postpartum is that every woman is Vata imbalanced. So the etheric, the floaty, the not having the feet on this earth, all that's in biology because we're supposed to startle. We're supposed to awaken when we hear a baby cry because that's how we know to feed them. Like all of this that we kind of judge or look down upon, or it's going to be so hard or it's horrible, the postpartum with the newborn. It's actually beautiful, right? Because we're keeping our babies alive. But mommy has to be cared for so that she can do that work. So just even that like changes everything. You're like, oh yeah, of course she needs that. So it's soups, stews, everything warming, keeping feet, socks on, feet warm, not going outside without a hat on, keeping the house warm, not drinking cold drinks, no smoothies, no raw foods, everything's cooked. Oatmeal's really boiled down. So basically, postpartum, you're a raw nerve. Like, it's like you've run 5 marathons and had an all-nighter and have the stomach flu. Like that, your system is just like, it's gone through the ringer. And so we really want to bring the nutrition and the warmth for the body to know to heal it. So, like when you get an injury, you put heat on it. Sometimes you alternate heat and cold, but the heat is also stimulating, right, the blood and everything to bring the warmth to heal that region. So that's what we're doing, the vaginal steaming, the sitz bath, and really keeping the body warm and wrapped, And with the Abhyanga, like I was telling you before, when I do the oil Abhyanga massages, it's like this raw nerve is then just coated in warm oil. It feels so good. And just like, it's like a hallucinogenic experience when I'm rubbing a mama's head with warm oil. It's like just helping her ground into this new self from maiden to mother and landing back in her body. And, this is a more spiritual aspect, but I really think we kind of ping pong between the spirit world and this world when we're new moms and maybe always, but we are like that for a reason. And it's so spiritual and so beautiful. And I really try to reframe that with my postpartum clients is this is not something to be gotten through. This is not something to white knuckle through. This is a sacred portal of time. And it's not only affecting these 6 weeks, like these 6 weeks are just the beginning, it's like getting you ready to then mother for the rest of your life. And in India, they have this saying, something to the effect of the first 40 days of life inform the next 40 years of your life. So it's also beautiful. What's your menopause going to be like? Are you going to be peeing yourself off and on? What's your pelvic floor? So it's, when I speak to couples about that, the men can really kind of grab onto that or like, oh yeah, like I want to be able to have sex with my wife. I want us to have a beautiful, intimate future together without her pelvic floor falling out. And statistically, more of the pelvic floor and incontinence issues are from not resting postpartum. It's not just the labor and delivery.
Wow.
Yeah. Because you think gravity, you've had all that pressure and then you're just going about your other day and tending to your other kids and cooking and cleaning. No, you need to be in that bed flat.
Okay. So freaking amazing. So I want to just really drill it down for particularly the men listening, but also for the women. I don't know if you can be any more clear because you're pretty damn clear. Like those 40 days are so important. Because what you're speaking to, we all see it. That a big thing that I think moms feel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Got all this baby weight on. I want to get out there, start running. I want to start doing all these things to start to lose the weight. And good God, like just to think of what that does to the body. And so how do you give moms comfort? And what can a dad say to mom that will be resonant versus you don't need to lose the weight. You know, the stuff we try to say that's like nice and there's like, fuck off. This is my body and I want it to look differently.
Right.
Without guilting him in and say that you're like, what do you got for us?
That's a really good question.
And our culture celebrates and perpetuates this. Oh, look at her. She's already out and about. Like she's already at the grocery store in her skinny jeans. Like that's celebrated. That's what you see in magazines. Look, only 3 weeks out or on social media. Like, look, day 4. And I see that and I'm like, go lay down. Allow the organs to get back into place. Like, please lay down. You know, I know I tried to be that mom right after baby number. It took me a few babies to start learning. And now I would do it so differently. Right. Now knowing what I know, I just didn't know that then, but, and suffered the pelvic floor issues and continence and all of that from baby number 1, just not knowing. So like you said, I ended up paying for it later.
Yeah.
Right. I ended up having to do all the rehab and everything years later. You know, fast forward 4 years, I invested in it then.
Totally.
So, so I'll start. I think it's, again, not dismissing a woman's feelings if she's sharing and just hearing. And I think acknowledging, what she's doing, you know, thank you for investing this time and devoting this time to our child. Thank you for feeding our child. Like your body is amazing. I'm fascinated by all its ability, right? That your body is life-giving. The way you're loving and snuggling with our child is life-giving, life-sustaining, and just like being in awe of this process and acknowledging that. Is there any way I can support you? Respecting this need and this time. And I think just feeling that loved and supported and seen in her process after will, I think, also allow a woman to not feel the need to get up and go, you know, get fit and be in that, because she's being celebrated for being in this process and this season and this. So that's what kind of first like comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I love that. I have so many things to say. Kind of the first one is so much. It's really interesting. I think this is a big lesson that so many women go through, that spiritual journey I was talking about when you're pregnant. Because for many women, what is your natural weight? You know, have you ever been your natural weight? Are you always 15 pounds skinnier than your natural weight? Because you don't eat, you restrict, you're bulimic. You know, like there's so many variables to this. Mm-hmm. So some women gain a lot of weight because they're already 20 pounds underweight when they get pregnant. And that's a whole thing that they have to work through, you know? So it's very common for disordered eating to come up, a lot of body dysmorphia, all of that through pregnancy and postpartum. I will say the healthier you are, the more active you are, you know, even before you conceive, you're setting yourself up to win, because your body will acclimate and it'll come back. If you can stay active, if you can swim, if you can walk. You know, I'm a big proponent of walking 3 to 5 miles when you're pregnant, especially towards the end. Really helps your labor and delivery. And then if you're eating the postpartum healing foods, generally more often than not, you drop that weight quickly because your body's getting the nutrition it needs. You're getting the good ghee and you're able to really produce amazing breast milk when you're eating right. It's like that creme fraiche. It's not like skim milk. You know, you're really giving such beautiful nutrition to your baby, and the weight, it does come off sooner than later. I mean, at least that's what I see mostly, is it's like the women that aren't losing in a natural kind of flow are the ones that don't have support, don't have help, are eating whatever they can get, you know, processed in a box without the good nutrition, and then are fried. And then that spikes your cortisone, and then your body just doesn't want to release because it's so fucked up hormonally. So it really is like a holistic 360 view of the body. And then the weight will find its natural place. And just have
Beautiful.
patience.
Thank you.
Just
Yeah.
have patience with yourself.
Well, and okay. So the follow up to that is how do people get in touch with you to do this work? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people
have
here
the
like,
support.
okay, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
How do I get this support?
Yeah. Thank you. So I live in LA for now. And, you know, I've moved more into coaching so I can help more women because I love working with them through pregnancy. And even I have like fertility clients right now too. But really helping you get your plan, quote unquote plan for postpartum, because like you were saying earlier, we can control the things we can control. This is something we can control to know however your pregnancy goes, however your birth and labor, because it always is a miracle. Baby has their reason. They need to come in the way they come in. Absolutely. We have our stuff. And then it's like all the variables wherever you're giving birth. But you can know that you at least are going to be held and blanketed and cared for in your postpartum time. And just knowing that is so huge. So they can find me motherthemother.com, and I'm at motherthemother on Instagram. And I am doing a little bit of in-home healing work, but a lot of it's virtual now, which has been a blessing of this past year.
Yeah, perfect. Because now you can help a lot more women.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're refining what that even looks like so you can.
Yeah. And every client's really different. And I love that. You know, like I had a couple from New Zealand recently because they were like, there's nothing awakened around here. We live in like the boonies of New Zealand. So I did prenatal work with them and got them set up with their postpartum plan. And I love that.
And this postpartum support, we can consider for a mother blessing or baby showers. Like what if we gifted, put a donation pot together where people could gift postpartum support and food and things like that. Like what if these were the gifts as opposed to, the bouncer or whatever.
Totally.
Like
100%.
chip in for this because this is so important for the mother, in turn, the partner, the family. But yeah, these are the types of gifts that are so.
And I love that. I'm like, I'll take money from like 20 of your friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like let's chip in and support this family.
Gift certificate. Like that. And that's so, I love that so much because that actually is real loving support of like, we love you so much. We want to protect your family and your marriage and like set you guys up to thrive. And also, because I didn't speak about this earlier on the sacred window of the first 40 days, it's not just for the women. Like men go through their own huge transition you can speak to better than I can, but to really honor that you're going through your journey too. And as a postpartum doula, I'm there to support you also. And to hold the container for the whole family and how healing it is for you too. Like sometimes if I'm in home with a client, I can take the baby for like a minute and you guys can cuddle and download and connect. Or, I'm in the other room making a meal and you all are napping together. It's a sacred time for the whole family. It's not just the mom and baby. It's the whole family unit.
Well, a couple, because I certainly didn't have that. And I didn't know that was something that I needed. I don't think any man really know that is a need.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And this idea of this gift, as I'm like, this would have been the best gift to give you. There's nothing more loving and caring. And so men out there, soon to be dads, do yourself a favor. I've been in this 21 years. This would be the best gift I could ever give my wife. So please do yourself a favor and your wife and your relationship a favor. That's amazing. Yeah.
All of it. All of it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else in closing? Are there any books that support this kind of that you would recommend?
So one of my dear friends and a colleague, Kimberly Ann Johnson. She's Kimberly Ann Johnson on Instagram, but she has a beautiful book, The Fourth Trimester. And that is my first to go to book. She also, and I want to tell you about this, Peyton, she has a new book called Call of the Wild, and her online group is Jaguar. And
there's your card.
yeah, there we go. And
back to the Jaguar.
This book is incredible because it's all about the nervous system. And I feel like it's mandatory reading for every single woman and men, but really women and people that birth, because it's like so next level and explaining. And I know all this and I study it. I'm literally underlining every sentence. It's so blowing my mind. And then there's Nurture by Erica Chitty Cohen, which is great. And then there's the First 40 Days Cookbook, which is a beautiful, beautiful gift for anyone because it has recipes too.
Is that Sally Fallon?
Oh, I love Sally Fallon too.
Okay.
Nourishing Traditions.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
The God. Anyway, it'll be in the
We
show
can put
notes.
Yeah, we'll
Show
link
notes,
to that in the
notes,
show
yeah.
notes, or you can just Google it, people.
Yeah, that's true. Duck a go it.
Oh yeah, duck go it. Yes, my bad. That's right. I got to work on that.
And Peyton, thank you for all your work. And I'm going to be asking you lots of questions as my little girls grow, because that to me is like the next, you know, and that is such powerful work. So thank you, because that is a white space that needs support and help.
Well, and I have an ebook coming out.
Oh, I was just gonna.
Were you gonna?
Yes, I'm like, oh, talk about No, I mean, talk about white space, but I wanted you to share the ebook that's coming out to support men.
Yeah, it's She Becomes a Dad's Guide to His Developing Daughter. So it's let's start the conversation.
You can cry. I know you don't, but you can.
Let's start the conversation now, and really, obviously, you know, it'll help you attune to your partner, learning through your child, which is sometimes a little easier. But yeah, I think this is a time in a father's life where they feel like they're separated from because they want to be respectful or not know what to do with it, or comments can be made that could be impactful and not even with that intention. So it's just a cheat sheet for understanding our beautiful bodies and cyclical nature and rhythms, and really attuning to that and learning how to witness it and support it in different phases of our cycle. And so that's it will be downloadable Father's Day.
And where are they going to be able to find that, babe?
It's PeytonCallahan.com, my website. So coming soon.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
God.
Thanks for remembering.
We got
our
some
son's in the house
some
cooking.
ruckus going in the kitchen. I guess that's
the perfect time to
That's
end.
a wrap. McLean, thanks for being here. Thanks for having us on.
I love you too. Thank you.
So great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. J-Ma.